7 years after my divorce from Dante Caruso, I ran into him in a flower shop. He was there buying flowers for his pregnant wife. I was only there because it was raining. After a few awkward seconds, we greeted each other like strangers, pretending there wasn't a whole graveyard of hatred standing between us. Dante asked how I'd been all these years. I told him I was doing well. Then, just as we were about to part, he suddenly said, "Elena, you look different now." I smiled, but I didn't answer. There was nothing different about me. I just didn't love him anymore. The wind slipped through the crack of the shop door, cold and damp. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the rain tapping against the window. Then the florist came out holding a bouquet of irises and broke the silence with a bright smile. "Mr. Caruso, you're such a devoted husband. Coming out in weather like this just to buy flowers for your wife. Now that's real love." Dante took the bouquet and glanced at me almost instinctively, like he needed to explain himself. "Nora's been emotionally unstable during the pregnancy," he said. "Flowers help calm her down." I nodded and gave him a polite smile. "That's thoughtful." The rain outside had already started to let up. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Just as I was about to leave, Dante suddenly caught my wrist. "I'll drive you home." I pulled my hand away immediately and put some distance between us. "No need." My voice was calm, flat, clean. "I wouldn't want your wife getting the wrong idea." Then I turned and walked out before he could say anything else. Maybe he did say something. The wind was too loud. I didn't hear it. The cheap breakfast I'd bought on the way had already been ruined by the rain. What a waste. I tossed it into the trash by the curb. Just then, a gust of wind pushed up my sleeve and exposed the faded white scars on my wrist. I froze for a second. Then I remembered. This was the 7th year since my divorce from Dante Caruso. And the 3rd year since I had truly let him go. No heartbreak. No ugly breakdown. No urge to scream. I looked at him the same way I'd look at any stranger on the street. The rain stopped. I tugged my sleeve back down and walked toward the little breakfast shop. The moment I stepped inside, Mia, the girl who worked there, grinned and waved me over. "Elena, finally." I found a box while cleaning out the storage room. She dragged it closer and wiped the dust off the lid. "Take a look. If you don't want it, I'm throwing it out. We need the space for the new dough mixer." I bent down and brushed the dust away. Across the top of the box, in a sharp, arrogant handwriting I would recognize even if I were blind, were 3 words for Elena. Mia's eyes lit up immediately. "You. Who's this from?" She leaned closer, all curiosity as usual. "Just the packaging alone looks expensive. Whoever gave this to you really put in the effort." Then she looked at the signature and froze. Her eyes widened. "No way." She looked at me, then back at the name. "Dante Caruso?" Her voice cracked on the last syllable. "Wait, Dante Caruso? That Dante Caruso. The Dante Caruso everyone in the city knows? The Caruso heir? The one the papers keep calling both a genius and a monster." She stared at me like I'd suddenly grown a second head. "Elena, who the hell are you?" I opened the box. My voice stayed calm. "I'm Dante Caruso's ex-wife. The crazy ex-wife. The paranoid ex-wife. The stain on his perfect reputation. The woman he locked away in a private psychiatric facility and called the biggest mistake of his life." Mia kept asking questions, and in the end, I gave in. I sat down by the counter and told her everything. The Dante I knew wasn't born a mafia king. He wasn't born feared, powerful, untouchable. When I first met him, he was just a quiet, strange little boy nobody wanted. He had no friends. No real family. His parents were going through a vicious divorce, and neither of them wanted custody. They passed him back and forth like he was a burden neither one of them could afford to keep. Winter in South Brooklyn cut like broken glass. That year was especially brutal. Dante was 8 years old, wearing nothing but a thin sweater, curled up in the apartment stairwell, shivering so hard his teeth wouldn't stop chattering. I saw him, and I brought him home. Everything changed after that. My father wasn't in the mob, but he had deep connections with old neighborhood crews and knew exactly how the world worked. He also knew how to spot something rare. One night, while playing cards with Dante and trying to distract him, My father realized the kid had a terrifying brain. He could do mental math faster than grown men using calculators. He spotted patterns before anyone else did. He could memorize ledgers, routes, faces, shipments. Once my father understood what Dante was capable of, he stopped treating him like some abandoned street kid. He started seeing him as someone who could rule. From then on, Dante changed fast. By 10. He was helping older men count money and catch fake books. By 14, he could negotiate territory better than men 3 times his age. By 16, he had already become someone people looked at differently, someone dangerous, someone rising. And once the parents who had thrown him away realized what he was becoming, they suddenly wanted him back, both of them. They fought over him like starving dogs fighting over meat. Dante didn't go with either one of them. Instead, he knelt in front of my father and lowered his head. "I know the difference," he said, "between who is good to me and who actually loved me. From now on, you and Elena's mother are my real family. And I'll take care of Elena for the rest of my life." He kept that promise for a very, very long time. Dante kept climbing higher, but he never left me behind. When he got pulled deeper into family business, he made sure there was always a place for me in every property under his name. When he started taking power, he made sure nobody in the city dared disrespect me. When people looked down on me for being too ordinary, too soft, too small for his world, he would wrap an arm around my waist and tell them, "She stays with me. Always." I used to worry that I couldn't keep up with him. Dante was made for violence, strategy, power. I was just Elena. A girl from a tiny breakfast shop. A girl who didn't belong in silk gowns, private clubs, and blood-soaked loyalty oaths. But Dante once looked me straight in the eye and said, when I was 8, my parents threw me away and walked off. I sat in that stairwell all night. You were the one who opened the door. From that day on, I swore I'd never leave you. Elena, there is no Dante Caruso without you. No matter how high I rise, I will never throw you away. That was the kind of man he was. Obsessive, extreme. Once he decided something was his, he never let go. That was true when he built power. It was true when he chased me, and it was still true when he betrayed me. Betrayed. Mia's mouth fell open. She looked genuinely angry for me. Wait. You two grew up together. You practically held each other up. And he still cheated on you. With who? Some mob princess? Some senator's daughter? Some gorgeous snake in designer heels? I shook my head. None of those. The woman Dante cheated with was a flower girl. Mia blinked. What? I lowered my eyes to the box in front of me and said quietly, a skinny, plain-looking flower girl. By 27, Dante was already one of the most feared men on the East Coast. He had money, power, reputation, enough of all three to last 10 lifetimes. By then, he didn't care about the usual rich man hobbies. He had no interest in yachts, luxury watches, or racehorses. For some reason, he became obsessed with flowers, imported ones, rare ones, cheap ones, wild ones. If it bloomed, he wanted it. He filled our estate with them. But his favorite was always irises, because one year on his birthday, I gave him a potted iris. He stared at it for a long time and then said, "This flower started all of it. This tiny thing. It begins as almost nothing. Then, with enough control, enough care, enough interference, it becomes something beautiful." He smiled a little, like he was talking to himself. The process is fascinating. He said he liked flowers, but what he really liked was watching things change in his hands. He liked control. He liked shaping something fragile into something that needed him to survive. I never really understood what he meant. To me, a flower was just a flower. It bloomed when it wanted to bloom. It died when it had to die. Why make it so complicated? But Nora understood him instantly. That day, she was helping a gardener move flower pots. Her hands were covered in dirt, cheap clothes hanging loose on her thin frame, skin darkened by the sun. The second she heard Dante speak, she looked up like she had found religion. "Mr. Caruso is right," she said. "I like that feeling too. Whether a flower grows well or badly depends on the person raising it." Then she gently touched an iris petal and smiled. "Look how beautiful this one turned out. I took care of it myself. That autumn, Beneath a yard full of blooming irises, they met, because of flowers, and because of me. After that, Dante started buying flowers from Nora all the time. Roses, camellias, lilies, orchids. Every few days, new arrangements would be delivered to the estate. Little by little, our home stopped looking like a mafia mansion and started looking like some rich madman's private greenhouse, and slowly, Nora herself became part of the house too. At first, she was just the flower girl. Then she became the girl who helped in the garden. Then she became the girl Dante casually mentioned at dinner. Then she became the girl who always seemed to have a reason to stay a little longer. One day, Dante suddenly told me he wanted to sponsor her education. She's smart, he said. Too smart to waste her life selling flowers on the street. Nora stood in front of me, fingers twisting together nervously, the rough skin on her hands impossible to miss. She looked young, fragile, pitiful in exactly the way people like her knew how to look when they wanted mercy. Elena, she said softly, I'll study hard. I promise. I used to get good grades. I only dropped out because my mother got into an accident and I had to work. If you and Mr. Caruso are willing to give me a chance, I won't let you down. Her eyes were bright, wet enough to stir sympathy, but not enough to look calculated, and looking at her, I remembered Dante as a child. Cold. Abandoned. Desperate. I softened again. That was my mistake. For a long time, I treated Nora like a younger sister. I bought her clothes. I took her to get her hair and skin done. I taught her how to behave in rooms full of predators dressed like gentlemen. I taught her what to say, how to smile, how not to look scared even when she was. She clung to me and called me sister over and over again. She told me I was the best person she had ever met. She said that if she ever got the chance, she would repay my kindness. And in her own way, she did. She got into the same private university Dante controlled with money and influence, and on the night she got her acceptance letter, she climbed into my husband's bed. That day, I went home early on purpose. I had even bought a cake. I wanted to celebrate for her. I thought I was helping save a girl's future. Instead, I walked into my bedroom and found them half naked together. His shirt was open, her skirt was pushed up. His hand was still on her waist. She was wrapped around him like she had always belonged there. For 1 second, the whole room went white. Then everything turned red. I threw the cake at them. Cream splattered all over the sheets, the wall, his face. Then I started smashing everything I could get my hands on. The lamp, the mirror, the vase, the glass table decor, and all those damn flowers. Every flower Dante loved. Every flower he had brought home. Every flower that had quietly turned into a witness to my humiliation. I destroyed all of them. Nora screamed. Dante pulled her behind him and looked at me with the same cold expression he used when deciding whether a man lived or died. Elena, he said, voice flat, if you're done making a scene, close the door. I stared at him. He didn't look guilty. Didn't look ashamed. Didn't even look shaken, just annoyed. Then he glanced at Nora and said the words that ripped something open inside me for good. Have some dignity. Nora still has hers. Between me and his mistress, he chose her without even blinking. I demanded an explanation. My whole body was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Dante frowned like I was the one being unreasonable. Elena, you're still my wife. As long as you don't make trouble, Nora won't threaten your place. Nora burst into tears and dropped to her knees in front of me. I'm sorry, Elena. I know I've wronged you. But Dante and I really love each other. We understand each other in ways no one else does. You were so kind to me. I'll never forget that. I don't want your place. I don't want your title. I won't fight you for anything. I just want to stay by his side. I was still young then, too proud, too angry. Too stupid to understand that men like Dante always rewrote the rules in their own favor. I did the one thing I thought still mattered. I reported them. I sent evidence to the university board. I exposed the affair, the power abuse, the favoritism, the dirty strings pulled behind Nora's admission. I thought truth would matter. I thought rules would matter. I thought someone would care. Reality slapped me hard. No one was going to come after Dante Caruso. Not for me. Not for morality, Not when he funded half the institution and had enough people in his pocket to bury any scandal he wanted. The university didn't punish him. They punished me. I got written up for emotional instability and for damaging the school's reputation. And Dante made a public statement. He told the professors and department heads to take good care of Nora. He called her hardworking, brave, promising. He said she had clawed her way up from nothing and deserved support. He even made it clear that her admission had happened because of him. He didn't care how corrupt it looked. He didn't care what people whispered. He only cared that Nora had a future. So what was I? What was I supposed to be? The wife who stayed quiet. The wife who smiled and swallowed humiliation while her husband built another woman right in front of her. I locked myself in the house and cried until my throat felt raw. Meanwhile, Dante kept tending to his irises like nothing had happened. One evening, while trimming dead leaves off a pot by the window, he said in that calm, maddening voice, "Elena, do you still not get it? Your work, your name, your status, everything you have came from me. If you leave me, you become nothing. I already told you. Nora won't take your place. So why can't you just be sensible and let us live in peace?" In peace, the word almost made me laugh. There was no peace in sleeping beside a man who wanted someone else. No peace in watching your life get split apart in front of you. No peace in being told your humiliation was a fair price for staying married. So I fought back, loudly, messily. I ruined every image he tried to protect. When Dante gave public speeches, I replaced his presentation files with photos of him and Nora together. When reporters came to interview him, I rushed in and shouted the truth into their microphones. I wrote complaints. I posted videos. I made sure people heard me, even if they called me crazy for it. And in the end, that was exactly what he wanted, because Dante was smarter than me. Smarter, richer, colder, and cruel enough to use my pain as a weapon. He knew exactly how to push me, exactly how to provoke me, exactly how to make me break in public, and then he kept the proof. Every scream, every breakdown, every moment that made me look unstable enough to destroy my own credibility, his name, his power, his money, his understanding of me, all of it became a blade. By the time it was over, I had lost everything. I was forced out of my position. My degree was revoked under the excuse of procedural review. My reputation was ruined. And Dante Caruso, the man who once swore he would never leave me, personally had me committed to a private psychiatric facility. I said all of that in a steady voice, flat, almost detached. But Mia was already crying. What happened after that? She asked. I looked down at my hands. After that, I said, I found out I was almost 5 months pregnant. And Dante brought me home. The baby changed things. At least for a while. After the diagnosis, Dante had me discharged and taken back to the estate. He sat beside me, held my hand, and spoke in the same calm tone he used when cleaning up blood after a mess had already been made. "Yes, I made mistakes," he said, "but you went too far too, Elena. Your parents have aged 10 years because of this. People talk about them everywhere they go. You're not a child anymore. Stop being reckless." Then he placed my hand over my stomach. "Think about the baby. Think about your parents." And I broke, not loudly, not dramatically. I was just too tired to keep fighting. So I gave in. After that, I became half dead inside. I moved through that huge house like a ghost. A beautiful prison full of flowers, polished marble, and silence. Dante came back 3 nights a week. On those nights, he would sit by me, talk to my stomach, and read to the baby as if effort could fix what betrayal had already destroyed. The other nights, he was with Nora. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I always knew. The perfume on his shirt, the scratches on his wrist, the softened look on his face whenever her name came up. He used to have stomach problems. When we were younger, he hated junk food, hated waiting in line, hated wasting time on anything he thought was stupid. But with Nora, suddenly none of that mattered. He took her to trendy dessert shops. He stood in line for ridiculous drinks. He ate hot pot at midnight and ice cream after, just because she wanted both. This was a man who once said wasting 10 minutes on nonsense was pathetic, Now he could waste an entire night making her laugh. He watched cheesy romance movies with her, the kind he used to mock. He let her put her name on work she had no right touching. He bent rules for her, broke rules for her, buried his own standards for her. For Nora, Dante trampled on everything he once claimed mattered. My dignity. Even the rules of his own world. What finally shattered me was the proposal. By then, Dante had become even more famous, not just in the underworld, everywhere. He'd made a move big enough to land his name in international headlines. Something brutal, brilliant, and profitable enough to make businessmen admire him and enemies fear him. He was at the peak of everything: power, reputation, influence, and at the brightest moment of his life, he chose to share it with Nora. He named one of his new luxury clubs after her, Nocturne Promise. Under those lights, with the whole city's elite watching, Dante built her a fantasy. He arranged a private ceremony upstairs, small, exclusive, intimate. Everyone knew what it really was, even if nobody said it out loud. Not a legal wedding, something crueler. A public promise. A declaration. A slap across my face in front of people powerful enough to enjoy it. Nora walked toward him in a white dress. A white dress, and I felt something inside me go cold, because I never got one. Dante, and I never had a real wedding. No vows. No celebration. I had begged once. Begged, and Dante had looked at me and said, "Elena, you know me. I don't care about meaningless ceremonies. Why waste energy on appearances when I have real work to do?" Because I loved him, I accepted it. Because I loved him, I kept lowering the line until there was no line left. And because I loved him, I lost everything. That night, watching Nora in white, hearing the applause, seeing Dante look at her like she was something precious, I shattered. I rushed forward in front of everyone. I grabbed her dress and tore it. I slapped her hard enough to send her stumbling. Then I hit her again. The room exploded. People shouted. Someone screamed. And then Dante threw a glass of water in my face. Ice cold. The room went dead silent. He looked at me with open disgust. "Elena," he said, "you've crossed the line." That was the night he asked for a divorce. That was the night he said he was leaving with Nora. I begged him not to. I hate admitting that now, but I did. I cried. I shook. I grabbed his sleeve and said the ugliest, most desperate thing I had ever said in my life. "If you walk out that door tonight, I'll take this baby and jump." Dante stopped. For 1 second, I thought maybe I had reached him. For 1 second, I thought maybe somewhere under all that coldness, the boy from the stairwell was still there. He did stop. But he didn't stay. He pushed me away. Maybe he only meant to scare me. Maybe he thought I was bluffing. Maybe he was just tired of me. I don't know. What I do know is this: I fell, and I lost the baby, the child I had once believed might save what was left of my life. After that, I was sent back to the psychiatric facility. This time, the diagnosis was severe depression. I said all this with a faint smile. Not a happy one. Just the kind people learn to wear after surviving things they should have died from. In my second year inside, I told Mia, Dante filed for divorce. I fought him as long as I could. In the end, I got nothing except that box of old junk. For the first year after the divorce, I was a mess. I cut myself. I lost my mind over and over again. I couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. My parents were terrified. They aged so fast it scared me. So I started helping out at the shop. At first, just to keep them from worrying. Then little by little, I got better. I looked around the little breakfast shop, the steam, the flour, the warmth, the small life I had rebuilt with my own hands. Eventually, I took over the place. And honestly, I'm doing okay. By then, Mia was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Elena," she whispered, "you've been through hell. Dante Caruso is a bastard. If I ever get the chance, I swear I'll beat the hell out of him for you." The words had barely left her mouth when the heavy curtain at the entrance was lifted. A tall figure stepped inside. For a second, the steam from the kitchen blurred everything. I couldn't see his face clearly, but suddenly, I remembered the sentence Dante had tried to say at the flower shop before I walked away, the part one hadn't heard. Now, standing there in the doorway with years of wreckage between us, I thought maybe I finally knew what it had been. "Elena." I regret it. The moment the steam cleared, I saw who was standing at the door. It was Dante. He wasn't wearing his usual tailored black suit. Just a dark gray sweater with the sleeves pushed up to his forearms, exposing the watch on his wrist, the one I had bought or him with half a year of saved allowance. It wasn't expensive, but he had worn it for years. There were bloodshot veins in his eyes. Dark shadows sat heavily under them. The sharp, untouchable Mafia boss who used to look like he owned the whole world was gone. In his place stood a man who looked tired, worn out, almost wrecked. Mia immediately stepped in front of me, hands on her hips, glaring at him like a furious little guard dog. "Mr. Caruso? You've got some nerve coming here. What, you here to hurt Elena again?" Her voice trembled with anger, but she didn't back down for even a second. Dante didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on me the whole time. There was something unfamiliar in them: guilt, pain, struggle, and something even lower than all that: humility. He opened his mouth, swallowed once, then said in a rough voice, "Elena, one." I lifted a hand and cut him off. My tone was calm, flat, the same one I'd use on any random customer. "Mr. Caruso, this is a breakfast shop. We don't welcome people who have no reason to be here. If you want food, get in line. If you came to see me, I'm sorry. I'm busy." Then I turned around, picked up a rag, and started wiping down the counter as if he were nothing but air. I could still feel his eyes on me, heavy, constant, suffocating. Mia kept glaring at him and muttering under her breath, but he acted like he couldn't hear a thing. He just stood there, motionless, like a statue nobody wanted anymore. A long time passed before he finally spoke again, and when he did, his voice cracked. "Elena, I know I was wrong. I regret it. I really regret it." The words landed lightly, like a feather drifting onto still water. Nothing moved inside me. 0.7 years, 0.3 years of dragging myself back out of hell. All the screaming nights, all the days I wanted to die, all the humiliation, all the grief. Time had already sanded my feelings for him down to dust. Regret? What a cheap, pathetic little word. Where was that regret when I lost my baby? Where was it when he threw me into a psychiatric facility? Where was it when he held Nora up like treasure and ground my dignity into the floor? I didn't turn around. I just said, quietly, "Mr. Caruso, your regret has nothing to do with me. We've been divorced for 7 years. You live your life. I live mine. That's the best ending we're ever going to get." Dante suddenly took a step toward me, like he wanted to grab my wrist. I moved aside before he could touch me. His hand froze in midair. The look on his face was almost hollow. "I know," he said, voice lower now. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I can't forgive myself, not for a single day. I keep thinking about when you were 8 and you brought me in from that stairwell and gave me hot soup. I keep thinking about when I was 16 and you stayed beside me through the worst years. I keep thinking about the promise I made to take care of you for the rest of my life, and I keep thinking about how I was the one who destroyed all of it." His eyes were red, and for the first time in my life, I saw Dante Caruso cry. The same man who had once been cold enough to bury people alive with a single nod. The same man who never lowered his head, never showed weakness, never let anybody see him break, and yet there he was, crying in front of me. But I felt nothing. No softness, no ache, no satisfaction either, just something bleak and tired, because those tears weren't for me. They were for himself, for his guilt, for what he had lost, for the part of his life he had burned down with his own hands. "Nora's pregnant," he said suddenly, bitterness curling around the words. "But every time I look at her, I think of you. I think about our baby. If I hadn't pushed you that night." He stopped and swallowed hard. "Our child would be 6 by now. When I look at her stomach, all I feel is regret. I hate myself for what I did to you. I hate myself for being that man." Mia snapped before I could say anything. "And what's the point of saying that now? Can you give her child back? Can you undo those months in that psych ward? Can you live through what she lived through for her?" Dante didn't argue. He just lowered his head, shoulders shaking once, because Mia was right. Every word of it. What he owed me could never be repaid, and his punishment had never really stopped. Nora was gentle enough on the surface, obedient enough when he wanted her to be, but she had never once made him feel peace. He looked at her and saw a shadow. A reminder, a living, breathing reminder of the worst thing he had ever done. He had money, power, respect, fear. But he had lost the one person who had once been his whole world, and with me, he had lost whatever peace he might have had left in him. His family had started cracking from the inside too. Men who had once sworn loyalty to him began quietly building their own power. His businesses had stumbled into one crisis after another. He had survived them, sure, but survival had cost him sleep, appetite, patience, and whatever was left of his sanity. He was exhausted all the time, every night. He closed his eyes and saw me breaking apart, saw the baby we never got to keep, saw the half-frozen boy in the stairwell, saw the little girl who had opened the door for him. I know I deserve every bit of it, he said at last, lifting his head to look at me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Let me stay near you. Let me see that you're okay. Even from far away, that's enough for me. I finally stopped wiping the counter and turned to look at him. His eyes were red, full of pleading, stripped of all the arrogance he used to wear like armor. He looked nothing like the Dante Caruso I had once known, and still, all I did was shake my head. No. Mr. Caruso, I've already let go. You should let go too. Then I turned and walked into the kitchen. Behind me, I could hear Mia still cursing him out under her breath, and Dante letting out one long, heavy sigh. The kitchen window was open. The early breeze drifted in, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the shop down the street. Irises. Once upon a time, that smell would have broken me. Now it meant nothing. I knew Dante's regret had only just begun, and I knew his punishment was nowhere near over. As for me, all I needed was this little breakfast shop, and the quiet life I had rebuilt inside it. That was enough. Dante didn't leave. He stayed outside the shop like a statue, from morning until evening. Mia tried to throw him out more than once, but I stopped her. I told her if he wanted to stand there all day, that was his business. As long as he didn't affect my customers, I didn't care. That night, when I closed up, he was still there. The streetlight stretched his shadow long across the sidewalk, making him look lonelier than I had ever seen him. The second he saw me come out, he stepped forward. Elena, let me drive you home. It's not safe this late. I shook my head. I'll manage. Then I walked straight toward the bus stop without looking back. I could still feel his eyes on me the whole way there. After that, he started coming to the breakfast shop every single day. He didn't talk much, just sit in the corner, order breakfast, and quietly watch me. Sometimes he'd help clear tables. Sometimes he'd wipe down windows. Sometimes he'd carry boxes or restock supplies. He moved carefully, like some ordinary worker trying not to get fired. Mia still hated him, but she stopped trying to throw him out. Now, every time she saw him, she just gave him the coldest look she could manage. That went on for half a month. Then Nora showed up. It was a busy morning. The shop was full, and I was in the middle of packing breakfast orders when I heard the sharp click of high heels at the door. I looked up. Nora walked in wearing a designer dress, full makeup, her baby bump starting to show. 2 bodyguards followed behind her. She looked polished, expensive, arrogant, like a queen who thought the whole room should kneel. The moment she walked in, everyone turned to look. She came straight to me and looked down at me with a mocking smile. Elena, long time no see. Wow. So this is what you've come to? A sad little breakfast shop? That's honestly pathetic. I set down what I was holding and answered calmly. How I live is none of your business, Miss Vale. This is my shop. Watch your tone. Don't disturb my customers. My tone. Nora let out a cold laugh and shoved one of the breakfast trays so hard that the soup spilled all over the counter and floor. You think you get to talk to me about tone? Elena, don't forget who you are now. You're the ex-wife Dante dumped. The crazy woman everybody laughed at. And me? She rested a hand over her stomach, smiling with deliberate cruelty. I'm his fiancé. I'm the future Mrs. Caruso. I'm the one he treasures. I'm carrying his child, his flesh and blood. He gives me everything I want. He listens to me. He spoils me. He protects me and you. She looked me up and down. You couldn't even keep one baby alive. You never got one real piece of love from him. So tell me who's the pathetic one here? All around us, customers had stopped eating. People were whispering now, looking at me with curiosity, pity, judgment. Mia's face went white with rage. She stormed over and pointed straight at Nora. You've got some nerve. Have you forgotten what you used to be? Elena helped you and you had nothing. You stole her husband, got her child killed, and ruined her life. You're the disgusting one. Nora's face darkened instantly. Stole? She snapped. I didn't beg her for help. She was stupid enough to help me. That's on her. She was too weak to keep Dante. That's on her too. Dante loves me, not her. If she hadn't clung to him and made everything miserable, I wouldn't have had to suffer either. Then she stepped closer to me, lowering her voice so only I could hear. I know you're not over him. I know you still want him back, but let me make this clear, never happening. Dante is mine. His money, his power, his name, everything he has is mine. So stay away from him, or I'll make your life very ugly. I looked at her twisted face and felt nothing but disgust. The girl who used to stand there covered in dirt, calling me sister with watery eyes, had turned into exactly what she had always wanted to be: greedy, cruel, ugly inside. She thought getting Dante meant she had won everything. What she still didn't understand was this: Dante had never really loved her, not the way she thought. What he gave her was guilt. Escape. Projection. A place to dump everything ugly in himself that he couldn't face. He hadn't chosen her because she was special. He had chosen her because she was there when he wanted to destroy himself. Miss Vale, I said quietly, wiping soup off my hand with a towel. I haven't had feelings for Dante in a very long time. I just want to run my shop and live my life. I don't want anything to do with either of you, so relax. I'm not taking Dante from you. I'm not taking anything from you. Because from where I stand, everything you two have means absolutely nothing. Nora's face twisted. You bitch. She raised her hand to hit me, but before she could, someone caught her wrist hard enough to make her cry out. We all turned. Dante was standing there in the doorway. His face looked terrifying, cold, dark, furious, in a way I had never seen before. Not even when I smashed his flowers, not even when I ruined his public image. His fingers were locked around Nora's wrist so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Dante. Nora's voice changed instantly, turning soft and tearful. She insulted me. She tried to humiliate me. She was going to hit me. Shut up. His voice was ice. Pure ice. Nora froze. He looked at her, and there was not one ounce of softness in his face. Have you lost your mind? She stared at him in disbelief. Dante, how can you say that to me? I'm doing this for you. I'm protecting you. I'm protecting our baby. Protecting me? He let out a humorless laugh and released her wrist so suddenly she nearly stumbled. She was never trying to take me. You're the one losing your mind. You're the one making scenes. You're the one who keeps crossing lines. Nora, listen carefully. He took one step toward her, and even the bodyguards looked tense. You are never coming here again. You are never speaking to Elena again. You are never laying a hand on her, and if you do... His eyes went colder. I won't go easy on you. Nora looked like she had stopped breathing for years. He had spoiled her, defended her, handed her everything. He had never spoken to her like this, never looked at her like she was something foul. Her lips trembled. You're doing this because of her? I'm pregnant with your child. Dante didn't soften. The child is one thing. You're another. If you ever try to hurt Elena again, I won't spare you. Then he turned to me, and when he looked at me, the anger in his face changed. Not gone, just quieter. Are you okay? He asked. Did she touch you? I shook my head. I'm fine. Take your fiancé and leave. Stop disrupting my business. He nodded once, then turned back to Nora. Go. She stood there crying, not moving. Dante, you can't do this to me. I've stayed by your side all these years. I've given you everything. How can you turn on me like this? He didn't answer. He just signaled the bodyguards. They stepped forward and took her by the arms. Nora fought them, screaming his name, crying so hard her voice broke. But Dante never looked back. Watching her get dragged out, I felt no pity. Everything happening to her now had been waiting for her from the start. She stole what was never really hers. And sooner or later, stolen things are always taken back. After Nora was dragged out, the breakfast shop slowly settled back into its usual rhythm. Customers went back to eating. A few people whispered. A few kept sneaking glances at me. But in the end, everybody returned to their own lives. The same way people always do after watching someone else's disaster. Mia let out a long breath and came over to me. Elena, are you okay? That psycho almost hit you. I gave her a small smile. I'm fine. She's all bark. Nothing else. Mia rolled her eyes. Yeah? Well, if Dante hadn't shown up when he did, that bark might have come with claws. Then she lowered her voice and looked toward the door, where Dante was still standing outside, talking coldly to the bodyguards before sending them away. I hate to say this, she muttered, but the way he looked at you just now, he really has changed. He used to treat you like you were disposable. Now he acts like one wrong breath near you and he'll burn the world down. I wiped the counter again even though it was already clean. He's not protecting me, I said. He's protecting his own guilt. Everything he's doing now is for himself. So he can sleep at night. So he can pretend he's not the same man who destroyed me. Mia opened her mouth like she wanted to argue. I didn't let her. Enough, I said. We still have work to do. So we went back to work. That should have been the end of it. But the truth was, something inside me had shifted, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted him back, but because seeing him look at Nora the way he once looked at me, cold, disgusted, done, made one thing brutally clear. He was finally turning into the monster I had always known he could be, just not for me this time. After that day, Nora stopped coming to the shop. But I still heard about her. In places like ours, news spreads faster than steam. Customers would sit with hot buns in their hands and gossip like they were reading headlines. According to them, Nora had been taken back to the Caruso estate and effectively locked inside. No going out. No seeing anyone. No calls. No surprise visits. Nothing. She still had servants. Still had doctors. Still had every expensive comfort money could buy, but comfort isn't freedom. And women like Nora don't survive well inside gilded cages. Apparently, she panicked. She cried, begged, apologized, promised never to come near me again. She told Dante she'd changed, that she would behave, that she only acted the way she did because she loved him too much. He didn't care. Or if he did, he didn't show it. He barely saw her anymore. When he did go back to the estate, people said he only asked one thing. How's the baby? Then he'd leave. No warmth. No softness. Nothing. And while Nora was unraveling inside the house, Dante's empire was starting to crack outside of it. The men under him had smelled weakness. Some of them had resented him for years, his temper, his arrogance, the way he'd bent rules for the wrong people and punished the wrong enemies. Now they were getting bold. The whispers turned into moves. Small betrayals first, then bigger ones. A shipment got hit. A warehouse went up in flames. A business partner backed out of a deal at the last second. Then another. And another. Each time, Dante managed to contain the damage. But every time he walked into my shop, he looked more exhausted. More hollow. There were days he sat at the same table for hours without touching his food. Just smoking. Just staring. Just looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Sometimes I caught the look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. That look wasn't anger. It wasn't pride either. It was something worse. Someone drowning quietly. But I never spoke to him. Not once. I kept making breakfast. Kept taking orders. Kept living my life. He could sit there and fall apart in silence if he wanted to. That wasn't my problem anymore. Then one night, it rained. Hard. The kind of cold, miserable rain that crawls into your bones. The same kind of rain as the day I had run into him again at the flower shop. I closed up late that evening. When I stepped outside, I saw him standing beneath the awning across the street. Completely soaked. Hair dripping. Shirt clinging to his skin, and in his hand a bouquet of irises. They were ruined. Rain heavy, bent, half dead. Just like him. The second he saw me, he crossed the street. Elena. His voice sounded raw. I stopped, but I didn't move closer. Rain slid down the side of his face, mixed with something that might have been tears. He held the flowers like they meant something. Like they could still mean something. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't answer. He looked wrecked. Not polished. Not controlled. Not like Dante Caruso, the man who could make people disappear with a phone call. Just a man standing in the rain, falling apart. I know I did horrible things to you, he said. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. but I don't know what to do anymore." His voice cracked. "I'm running out of things to hold together." He laughed once, bitterly, like the sound had cut his throat on the way out. "My men are turning on me. My businesses are getting hit from every side." Nora cries, screams, breaks things, and I can't even stand to look at her. Every day feels like punishment. Then he looked at me with red, sleepless eyes, and every day I think about you. About what you did for me. About what we had. About what I destroyed. He gripped the bouquet tighter. "If I hadn't betrayed you. If I hadn't hurt you. If I hadn't pushed you. Our child would be alive. We'd have a 6-year-old by now. We might have been happy." He was crying openly now. Not the restrained kind. Not the kind powerful men allow themselves when nobody's watching. He was really crying. Rain and grief and self-hatred all over his face. "Elena," he said, voice broken, "give me one more chance. I'll walk away from all of it. The businesses. The power. The family. I'll leave it all behind. I'll stay here. With you. I'll help at the shop. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I won't leave again." I looked at him for a long moment. At the flowers. At the ruined man holding them. At the wreckage he had become, and all I felt was stillness, not revenge. Not satisfaction. Not love. Just stillness. "Mr. Caruso," I said quietly, "there is no one more dangerous than a man who only learns regret after he has destroyed everything." He flinched like I'd hit him. "There's no second chance here. There's no fixing this. There's no version of our life where you get to come back now and pretend you finally understand what you threw away." I stepped around him and opened my umbrella. "The past is dead. So let it stay dead." Then I walked into the rain and left him standing there. Behind me, I heard him choke on a sob. I didn't turn around. By the time I got home, my sleeves were damp, my shoes were wet, and the city lights had turned into smears behind the rain on the bus windows. I showered, changed, made tea, then sat by the window and listened to the storm. At one point, I looked down at the pale scars on my wrist. Once, those scars had felt like open wounds. Now they were just proof. Proof that I had survived him. Proof that I had survived myself. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in the city, Dante Caruso was finally learning what it meant to lose everything and still keep living. Tried to cry her way out of it hadn't worked. I could almost picture it. Nora standing there in some expensive silk robe, pale and panicked. Dante in the doorway, looking at her the way he looked at people who had just signed their own death warrant. According to one version, he had thrown the phone onto the bed and said, "You really thought I wouldn't know." According to another, he had been even colder. "You sold me out for a way out of a cage you built yourself." Either way, the result was the same. She begged. She cried. She told him she only did it because she was scared. Because she loved him. Because she couldn't bear to lose him. Because she didn't know what else to do, and for once, Dante didn't bend. Didn't soften. Didn't rescue her from the consequences of being exactly who she had always been. He looked at her and finally saw her clearly. Not the girl from the flower shop. Not the poor thing he had saved. Not the woman he had used to wreck his own life. Just Nora, selfish. Desperate. Venomous. A woman who had taken kindness and turned it into a knife. By evening, the whole neighborhood had heard what happened next. Nora was removed from the estate. Not sent to one of the main family properties. Not hidden away somewhere elegant. Taken to an isolated villa outside the city. Guards posted. No visitors. No freedom. No direct contact with anyone. A beautiful exile. And a permanent one if the rumors were true. Some people said she had thrown herself on the floor sobbing and clutching her stomach. Some said she had screamed that she was carrying his child, and he had told her coldly that the child's safety would be provided for, but she would never again have access to him, his business, or his name. Some said she had gone into such a hysterical state she triggered early complications with the pregnancy. By lunchtime, Mia had already heard 5 different versions and believed all of them. Good, she said viciously while stuffing buns into paper bags. Let her rot. She ruined your life. She deserves worse. I looked out the window at the street beyond the glass. I used to think I'd feel better if she suffered, I said. Mia turned to me. But I shrugged. But I don't. And that was the truth. Once, I had hated Nora so much it felt like acid in my chest. I hated the way she called me sister. Hated the way she smiled with dirt on her hands and innocence in her voice. Hated the way she took and took and took. Hated what happened to my child. Hated what she helped make of me, but when I heard she had finally fallen, I felt nothing close to joy. Maybe time had worn the hatred down. Maybe healing had made revenge feel smaller than it used to. Or maybe once you've survived the worst thing that can happen to you, other people's ruin just stops feeling important. That evening, Dante came in later than usual. He looked worse. There was a new kind of emptiness in him now, like something had finally snapped and stayed broken. He didn't help out. Didn't smoke. Didn't even order food right away. He just sat there in the corner, staring at nothing. At closing time, when I was flipping the sign on the door, he finally spoke. Elena. I looked over. You heard about Nora. It wasn't a question. I nodded. I heard. He rubbed a hand over his face and laughed once, bitter and tired. I know what people are saying. And most of it's true. A long pause. Then, quietly, I know I can never make it right. But I'm still sorry. I looked at him. Really looked. At the shadows under his eyes. At the grief sitting on his shoulders. At the man who had once stood at the center of the city like he owned it, now reduced to apologizing in a half-empty breakfast shop to the woman he had broken. And still, it changed nothing. You don't need to make it right, I said. You can't. You don't need my forgiveness either. All you need to do is stop dragging me into your collapse. Then I turned off the last light in the shop and walked past him. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. And for the first time in a long time, I felt almost light, not because Dante was suffering, not because Nora had finally fallen, but because none of it owned me anymore. Not their love, not their betrayal, not their ruin, nothing. After Nora was sent away, Dante's life got darker by the day. The cracks in his empire finally split wide open. The men who had been waiting for weakness stopped whispering and started moving. They took deals out from under him, turned allies against him, started carving pieces off his business like vultures pulling meat from bone. Some wanted money. Some wanted territory. Some just wanted to watch Dante Caruso fall, and for the first time in a very long time, they got exactly what they wanted. He still came to the breakfast shop at first. But he wasn't the same even as the broken version of himself I had already gotten used to. He stopped helping. Stopped watching me the way he used to, like my face alone was enough to keep him breathing. Now he just sat there sometimes, silent, hollow-eyed, a glassy look in his face like part of him had already left. He looked older. Not by years. By damage. His hair had more gray at the temples. The sharpness in his face had turned harsh, then tired. The man who had once seemed impossible to touch now looked like life had taken both hands to him and kept going. Even Mia, who had hated him from the moment she learned my story, started going quieter whenever she saw him point one afternoon. After he left without finishing his food again, she leaned on the counter and sighed. It's weird, she muttered. What? She shrugged. I still think he deserves everything that's happening to him. But seeing someone that powerful fall that hard, it's ugly. I folded a paper bag and set it aside. Power always falls ugly, I said. She looked at me. And him. I met her eyes. Him too. That was all I said. Because what else was there to say? He had built a life on control. On fear. On the belief that he could destroy whatever stood in his way and still keep the things he loved. Men like that never imagine the fire will spread to their own house. But it always does. A few days later, he stopped coming. At first, I barely noticed. The shop was busy. Life kept moving. People came in hungry, impatient, half awake, asking for coffee and buns and extra sauce and change for large bills. My hands were full. My days were full. That had become the shape of my life now, small, ordinary, steady things. The kind of life I had once thought would never be enough. The kind of life that ended up saving me. 3 days passed. Then 5. Then a week. Finally, one of our regulars came in with the news. Did you hear? He asked as soon as he sat down. Mia looked up first. Heard what? Dante Caruso's finished. The words hung in the air for a second. He lowered his voice, but not by much. His men turned on him for real this time. Most of the businesses are gone. The rest are being swallowed up. People walked. Money disappeared. Even the guys who used to worship him are keeping their distance now. Mia stared. What about Dante? The customer shook his head. He collapsed. Too much drinking. Too much stress. No sleep. No food. He's in the hospital. From what I heard, it's bad. Mia turned to me slowly. I kept sealing a bag of buns. She hesitated before asking, "Do you want to go see him?" I looked up. No, she blinked. No, the word came out simple. Easy. Not bitter. Not forced. Just true. She searched my face, maybe expecting hesitation, maybe waiting for pain. I gave her neither. We're done, I said. What happens to him now has nothing to do with me. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. She understood. That was the thing people never seemed to get about forgiveness. Letting go didn't always mean softness. Sometimes it just meant the story no longer had a grip on your throat. A few weeks later, we heard he had been discharged. He didn't go back to the estate. Didn't fight for what he had lost. Didn't try to rebuild. Apparently, there was nothing left worth taking back. Some said he sold whatever remained under his name. Some said other people took it before he had the chance. Some said he simply walked away because he was too tired to bleed for it anymore. In the end, the details didn't matter. What mattered was this. Dante Caruso disappeared, not literally, but from the city, from the world he once ruled, from the place where his name had meant power and fear and money and blood. He was gone. Months later, I heard he had moved to a small town far away. No clubs. No men with guns. No black cars waiting outside iron gates. Just a quiet little house with a yard. Someone said he had started growing flowers. That made Mia laugh when she heard it. Of course he did. I smiled into my tea. But the customer kept talking. They say he grows irises. That made Mia go quiet again. And for a second, so did I. Then I looked back down. A little later, the same customer added, almost as an afterthought, apparently he sits outside sometimes and just stares at them for hours. Old people in the neighborhood say he talks to himself. Says a woman's name over and over. No one asked which woman. No one had to. I didn't feel anything when I heard it. Not triumph. Not grief. Not longing. Whatever belonged to Dante now, his loneliness, his regret, his ghosts, they were his. Not mine. My life had already moved somewhere he could no longer follow, and it was a good life. The shop got busier. We added new items to the menu. Mia stopped burning toast. Mostly. My parents came by more often, bringing fruit I didn't ask for and advice I didn't need. The old regulars still complained about prices like it was a sacred ritual. The neighborhood kids still pressed their faces against the glass when fresh trays came out. The mornings stayed loud and messy and warm, and somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary noise, I found peace so quietly I almost didn't notice when it arrived. One morning, sunlight poured through the front windows and spilled across the tables in soft gold. The whole shop looked warm, alive. Mia walked over and handed me a cup of hot milk. "You see this?" she said, grinning. "Perfect weather." I took the cup from her and smiled. Yeah. Outside, the sky was clear. No storm. No gray. No shadow waiting at the door. Just light. I stood behind the counter and watched customers come and go. Watched steam rise from fresh baskets. Watched the sunlight settle over the place I had rebuilt with my own hands, and for the first time in a long time, I thought about everything that had happened without feeling dragged back into it. Dante's betrayal. Nora's hunger. The baby I lost. The years I spent breaking. The years I spent crawling back out. All of it felt far away now. Not erased. Not forgotten. Just finished. Like a terrible dream that had once convinced me it would last forever. It hadn't. Dreams end. Pain ends too. Or at least, it changes shape until one day you realize it's no longer living inside you the same way. I was no longer the woman who begged to be chosen. No longer the woman who broke herself trying to hold on. No longer the woman people pointed at and called crazy, unstable, ruined. I was Elena. Just Elena. The owner of a small breakfast shop. A woman who had survived. A woman who had rebuilt. A woman who had learned that peace can look a lot like flour on your hands and morning light on the counter. As for Dante, he had his regrets. Nora had her ending. They belonged to each other now more than they ever belonged to me. Their ruin was no longer my burden to carry. The wind drifted in through the open window, carrying a faint trace of flowers from the florist down the block. Iris's. Once. That scent would have torn me open. Now it was just part of the morning. I lifted my cup, took a sip, and let the warmth settle in my chest. Mia bumped my shoulder lightly. You okay? I looked out at the sunlight and smiled. I am now.